Leo's parents came to San Francisco from the Philippines, and when Leo was born in 1936 in San Francisco, his father was working in the fields as a field worker, and his mother had a gambling table, so that's how they survived and managed to get a house in the Fillmore.
Talk a little bit about Carlos and Leo. How do they know each other, basically?
Oh, yeah. So Carlos's mom and dad also came from the same town in Lapog in the Philippines, and Carlos's mom and dad met in the States. But so they grew up and they knew each other like they were little brothers when they were small. And they were both born in 1936, but Leo was born in January and Carlos was born in December, so they're really 1 year apart. Leo, I feel, from what I could understand and listen to what they would tell me, Leo was always the dominant older brother. And even though there wasn't that much difference in age, he definitely played that role. And Carlos looked up to him. Carlos was more mischievous, I think, yeah. And Leo was very serious. He was a serious student, and his parents took his studying very seriously and made him check his homework, make sure it was good. If it wasn't good, they tore it up. So he came from a stricter family, I think. Carlos always told the stories about when he came over and he would see Leo drawing. He felt like he was in a magical world, and he was so in awe of Leo. And he'd say, gosh, how did you do that? And Leo would say, it's simple. You just sit down, take the paper, take the pencil, and start drawing. The more you draw, the better you get. That was kind of his personality. And Carlos tried, and he said he always felt like he couldn't do it as well as Leo, but he did keep trying. So. And it wasn't a competition where one was expected, that Leo would think he was better. Leo always encouraged him.
Mm-hmm. And how did you meet Leo?
How did I meet Leo?
Yeah.
Let's see. Later on, Carlos's family was able to move out to the Avenues, which is kind of pretty much an all-white neighborhood, and they lived about 2 blocks from where we lived. And my sister told me that Carlos wanted me to come to a party at his house right around the corner. And I said, I don't even know him, but okay, I'll go. So I went to the party, talked to Carlos, and he made me laugh all night long. He was very social, he had a lot of friends. And he said, do you want to go with me tomorrow to see and meet my cousin, Leo, who's a painter? And I said, painter? And he goes, yeah, he's an artist. I thought, oh, great, maybe I will. So I went with them, not knowing much at all. He said he's the black sheep of the family. I don't know why he said that, but his family's the black sheep of the family or something. So Carlos went up the stairs, rang the bell. I was right behind him. Leo opened the door, and the minute I saw him, I just fell for him. It was I was 17, I had been on dates and everything, but nobody ever meant anything to me. And Leo felt the same thing. We were kind of like just struck by lightning, yeah. And that was not expected, from anyone. And then we went into this big Victorian house. By then, his mother had died and his father left him. So he was living alone as a teenager, and he had paintings that went from floor to ceiling, black and blue paintings, and paintings with very, very emotional kind of things to me. I didn't know what they meant. I had never seen anything like it. So I said, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. And he said, anything you want is yours. So that was the first hour with Leo. And within about a week, I think I told Carlos I was going to go out, have a date with Leo. But in the meantime, from that first moment, Leo called me every night, and we would talk on the phone until I fell asleep, and I'd just leave the phone hanging there. And my mom would say, why do you always leave the phone? So that, it was a great romance, yeah.
And was he doing painting, or was he doing, at this point, was his painting out being shown or seen, or?
Yes, he was getting ready to show his paintings in this gallery, and the paintings that were up on the walls that I saw had never been seen. And very soon after, he had a one-man show. And I'd never known anyone that had it, so I was also impressed by that. The Dilexi Gallery, I think it was in the Dilexi Gallery. Yeah.
The Dilexi. And then there was the Sixth Gallery.
Sixth Gallery, he might have already shown something in, yeah. Not exactly sure the dates, yeah. But he was making bigger paintings than everyone else. I went to New York in 1959. Then Leo came less than a year after he came to New York. And then Carlos came about half a year later. When we first got there, and I had an apartment with my friend Patsy, who was also a painter, and then Leo and I decided to get a place together, which I didn't even know what a loft was in those days. A big, empty, building. And on each floor, different artists that Leo was associated with took the building. Park Place was a building down in what is now Tribeca. There were 4 floors. The artists that were his friends, some from California, they wanted to show their paintings downtown, kind of a protest against why do we have to be uptown where that's where all the galleries that, only show people that are known or from Yale or something like that. 3 people took 1 floor each, and then the top floor was to be a gallery where we would show work, and then people would have to come downtown to see the work. That was the big, exciting thing. We'll make them do it. We'll make them come downtown. There was nothing else downtown. This was the first one. And sure enough, people did come to see the work. There was one person, Mark DeSuvero, that was in the group, and he was kind of known uptown, so people came because of his name.
And then eventually it became an actual gallery. It went from the building that you were living in to becoming a gallery.
Paula Cooper was involved somehow, and then she got a gallery, and I think she called it the Park Place Gallery, yeah. So we moved the gallery space, and actually we moved out of Park Place and moved to Walker Street, yeah.
Now, in that time, he went from San Francisco, he was doing kind of expressionist work. In New York, it turned into kind of more hard-edged. How would you describe the work that was done in New York?
In New York, people were doing paintings and sculpture. It reflected what was going on in the city, like people were using black and white and red and yellow was like taxi cab yellow, things that reflected what was going on in the city. Leo was making these paintings, zigzag paintings, and they were very smooth and clean and precise and fell into possibly being minimal, but they weren't, yeah.
What other influences, the city was influencing him. What are its other main kind of influences or inspirations?
At that time, it was during the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War, and so a lot of civil unrest, and jazz had always been his favorite kind of music.
So you were there for about a decade, or a little bit less than a decade, and then what made the transfer back to San Francisco?
Well, in the meantime, Leo showed in different places, and a lot of things happened, and there was interest and possibilities and sales, and he made beautiful paintings. And then San Francisco Art Institute, I think it was the president, Fred Martin, knew Carlos and Leo because they had both gone to the school, and he wanted to give them a position of teaching at the Art Institute. And I guess it was the right moment.
So then when moving back to San Francisco, did his work change again from what was happening in New York?
Oh, I know one thing about the connection from New York, that he met artists like Don Judd and Saul LeWitt, and I can't think of anybody else right now, that were also doing a different kind of work, and there were a lot of different concepts. I mean, Saul Lewitt was coming up with ideas that you could have someone else make the work, and it's still yours if you conceived it. The idea of conceptualizing something makes it, you own it. And Don Judd was doing serial pieces. You make one piece, and another piece, another piece, and maybe that becomes one piece. So these were people that were influencing his ideas. His friends were not so much from San Francisco anymore. They were from wherever they came from, back east, and not in New York. So I found that interesting. And then when we moved back to San Francisco, then he started doing that painting, Desire. They seemed to be kind of fit into the minimal concepts, but they had a lot of texture and color and a lot of things going on that were not really minimal. He didn't consider himself a minimalist. Yeah.
That has some of the drips at the bottom, which was, it feels like none of the paintings in the 60s had anything expressive in that way.
Right. So he kind of went from not having any of the expressionistic things going on and to adding some, I felt like it was showing more emotion or showing the human hand, or something.
And then he did go back to the hard edge, shaped canvases, multi-panel work.
Right, later.
Do you have any sense of how that switch happened, or when he went back to that more hard edge?
No, I guess I didn't even think of it as being one or the other. I just thought, oh, this is what the new piece looks like. I don't think it was really dogmatic, in any way that I will never do this again.
All the drawings that are surrounding us are all based on the grid paper that he used to work with all the time. Most of them are. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what his drawing process was, or thoughts about how his drawings worked towards paintings or not?
You probably know more about that than I do, right? I mean, you saw him making.
Yeah, a lot of these were when I saw them when I was a kid. It was a constant working out ideas. And it's interesting to see that only few of these became actual paintings. That's the part that's kind of fascinating to see.
I've been going through the drawings, and there's a lot of drawings that I wasn't aware of. They were all kept in folders and papers in between, and it's fascinating the way he kept everything so orderly. And I didn't realize, that some of them were made as a drawing and then later became painting.
You've also been discovering, along with the history of drawings, we know he was such a meticulous note taker, meticulous recorder of even tiny sketches of these initial ideas and visuals and titles. Can you talk about any other materials that were like his writing or anything along those lines?
Right, he wrote in a date, like the 60s, I did this, and then in the 70s I got into that, and the 80s, he would talk about...
Like what he did, kind of his history, his thoughts about...
Well, he would say, now I want to use lines within a flat space to create a different dimension. Transitions, what he would transition to, and all the way through his life. Not long paragraphs, but kind of short statements about how this happened and then what I'm going to now and what I did next. It's pretty clear. He's always made poems along the way, and maybe it would be for birthdays or special occasions, kind of letters to someone or something like that. So some of those were pretty interesting and definitely part of whatever he was going through in his life at the time.
Along those lines, his love of kind of titling the works, he would always have some ideas around titles. And I was curious if you could tell us a little bit about thoughts on, well, there's a couple, like Surrealism is one that is sort of a unique title. Do you have any insight on what that is about?
Not too much. Well, I know that your name is in there, and so, he did at times throw your name in there. And then Super Real I think that was like what they called painting at the time, and then realism. So it's just playing with words and putting them together into one word.
And how about Last Tangle?
Oh yeah, Last Tango was definitely a reference to the movie Last Tango in Paris, and he loved that movie.
The word angle, he always liked to put angle
right.
into it instead of tango, it became angle, so
Right.
he liked that play, Last Angle.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea where desire, why that one would be called desire?
No, except that Leo always talked about, the deep emotional things like desire and love and passion, and he was always, that was part of his whole personality. He wasn't light and airy and easygoing. He was always, it was always deep.
Serious.
Serious, yeah, serious, yeah. And that painting Desire is perfect for that, yeah. I think he always felt a little angst about everything, it's like unloved or something, there was part of him that was like wounded, right? Yeah. And then also willing to, to show his emotion, but not able to in everyday life, but it definitely was there. He was not easygoing, yeah.
I mean, he got along with so many people, though, and people always remember his connection with them. So it's not like he was standoffish with the people he connected to.
No.
So
yeah,
easygoing and with the right people, I guess.
Yeah, and he was never, he was never not friendly, but he just didn't hang out, and he didn't watch football. He didn't do some of the things that a lot of guys do, or get drunk and act loud and crazy and all that. That wasn't Leo.
How about Exit? That's one I don't really know where that's from.
I think there was a Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the French writers that wrote No Exit at that time, yeah.
Yeah, I was curious why it wasn't No Exit, it's Exit.
Yeah, because it's Exit.
Yeah.
A lot of things are left out. There's not a lot of bright colors. It's also going through or coming out of a door. It looks like a door. And getting rid of things. I think of that as an exit.
And there's the other piece that's untitled, which is atypical with the diptych, the two pieces.
Oh, right, yeah.
Do you have any insight on that?
The only thing I could think of is they were made out of doors, right? So it kind of looks like, could be like a folding, opening, closing kind of door. I don't know why there were no names for some pieces, because he was pretty consistent,
Particularly that one, because he has the drawing of it, definitely the sketches of it in his small notes. It's funny that it didn't have a title in any iteration.
It was right on the page where everything else had a title.
Yeah.
There's a whole page with all the drawings and all the titles, all numbered and everything else, and there that one was with no title. Well, it was a different material too, so that's possible.
Yeah. What would you like people to know about Leo that maybe doesn't come through in the work itself or behind the scenes a little bit?
Well, one of the things that came up recently that I thought was interesting was when he was teaching, and he only taught for a while, he didn't teach for a long, long time like some other, I don't know if you brought it up or something, that he really enjoyed teaching the kids. And the kids were from pretty, like hard neighborhoods where he came from. And he made all these drawings that were out of shapes, geometric shapes, maybe 3 or 4 shapes, and he'd make a clown or a cartoon-shaped face. I saw them, I thought, what the heck are these? These are really different. What are they? And we realized later, we think they were for the students, the kids, to see that you can make things out of just using geometric shapes. Very minimal and very cartoony, but very cool, interesting. And some of them were kind of scary, like masks and stuff like that. Not too many people even knew that he worked with kids. I remember he had called me and said, oh my God, how do I get them to clean up? That was when he didn't have a good like he was very strong with you, and you knew exactly what he wanted you to do and not do, and it was no problem, you know, it was very clear. Strict father. But with the kids, it was hard for him to handle, you know, and I never had a problem with handling kids. I could handle home, but I didn't give him any clues. I remember that. I just thought, you know what, you have to figure that out yourself. Because I was surprised that he couldn't do it. He needed to leave time for them to clean up after, and he didn't have the heart to stop them. And then when the bell would ring or whatever it was, they'd all run off and he'd have a mess to clean up. So I thought that was a side that nobody really knew,
Yeah, we were talking about it. It was very interesting that the adult students at like the Art Institute, he sort of would just say, you're on your own, just do what you want to do, just be an artist, just create, do whatever you want to do. And that's not the greatest teaching tool. And then with the younger kids, he really did kind of show them things and open their eyes to the things. And what's cool is the drawings were kind of like this. They were just black and white, black line on white paper and Xeroxed. And then he would let them kind of play with those, kind of fill in the color kind of things, which was really fascinating.
It was love at first sight. I really think it was.